Good afternoon and welcome to this month's Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. Can I ask the committee members to introduce themselves, please? We've two members and myself as chair. So, Councillor Zaman.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Councillor Habibin Zaman and I'm the chair of the Adult Health and Social Care Scrutiny Panel.
Councillor Cooper.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Andrew Cooper. I'm the chair of the Corporate Scrutiny Panel.
And I'm Councillor Liz Smage and I'm chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. We have apologies from Councillor Uppal from Economy and Neighbourhoods Panel, and Councillor Andrew Marchington from the Children's Panel will be just a little late for the meeting, but he'll come in as soon as he can. Okay, so the minutes of the previous meeting then. These have already been circulated. Do we approve them as a true record? Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of things from matters arising from them. There were some actions from the last minutes. So minute 116, the Culture, Heritage and Tourism Strategies. We had some deputations that were sent last time, and the officer, head of Culture and Tourism, she said that she would contact those groups. So the Friends of Spenbeck and Mandam have been invited to make contact with the council's green space team. This team were already working with local groups and ward members to develop a master plan for a country park in this area, which would include tree planting as well as other ecological interventions. And the group had been invited to get involved. The Red House Heritage Group have been assured that citizens and communities would be at the heart of all three strategies, and that museums would continue to work with the group to ensure that the community could still access Red House at points throughout the year, as well as being able to access other facilities on the site on a regular basis. And the points raised by the environmental projects in Kirklees, Three Valleys Nature Park were to be included in a brief for consultants to ensure that what was developed was about sustainable tourism and a respect for the landscape, rather than encouraging tourism which leads to the landscape being damaged and unable to be appreciated for future generations. So there'll be a further engagement on that. And since the meeting, the Huddersfield Canal Society have been in touch, and their comments have been shared with officers working on the heritage strategy to ensure that the canals will be recognised within the strategy. And assurance had been given that when consultants were appointed to produce that strategy, the canals would be included and points made about how we share the information would be considered. Then on minute 118, it's just to report on that urgent decision that there was a reference to go to the Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Panel, and that went, didn't it, Councillor Zaman? There was an update on community testing as part of your wider update on the COVID-19. Yeah, thank you. So those are the updates on the actions from that meeting. Does any member have any interests they wish to declare?
No.
No, that's okay. And the meeting is in public and is being webcast live. The recording will be able to be viewed after the meeting via the council's website. There are no deputations and petitions, and there are no public questions today. So shall we move to item 7 then, the local flood risk management, which is at page 9 on your agendas. We have the flood manager here, Rashid Mahmood, and Matthias Franklin, head of planning and development, to speak to this report. So Rashid and Matthias, which one of you is going to start? Is it yourself, Rashid?
That's right, Chair. I'll just quickly summarise the report and then open it back to the panel, really, if that's okay. Okay, so shall I make a start, Chair?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So just going through quickly through the summary, I've just going to touch on a few things that we've been doing over the course of the last year. We've handed out £340,000 of community and business DEFRA grant support, and that was provided to flood victims in 2020 following Storm Kira and Dennis. We managed to submit a West Yorkshire Innovative Resilience Fund. That was submitted in January 2021, and that's in the region of 9.8 million. And we're hoping if the bid is successful, it will unleash some funding to scale up the community and the volunteer sector and the natural flood management works that we hope to do in Kirklees. Going on to another grant that we started this year in January 2021. It's the Property Flood Resilience Grant, and that's very much about offering grants up to £5,000 to flood victims of Storm Kira and Storm Dennis that will allow their properties to be more resilient. So it allows them to recover quicker in the future. And I've included in the appendix some of the progress and that we made in a lot more detail. It's an implementation plan there, which I don't intend to go through, but I'm happy to do so if that's what you want. But a key part of this report is to look at the local strategy that we have within the district, and one of the key recommendations I'm making here today is that we look to review that. So I'll just quickly touch on some of the background to that. So the current strategy was initially completed in 2013. It's had a number of revisions since then, the last one being in 2019. And it's a statutory duty for the local strategy to align with the national strategy. And as I've kind of stipulated in the report, the national strategy was was revised and published in July, and then it was adopted by government in September 2020. And I feel that we should now take this opportunity to review the local strategy and to make sure that it aligns with the national strategy. And I've kind of highlighted some of the issues that we would be looking into, and we are would like to probably look to emphasise our approach on nature-based solutions. Look to put a greater focus on creating resilient communities. Adaptive pathways, being able to be agile to new climate hazards, and that's very much about trying to understand the learning that's been developed in the industry and how we in our strategy in Kirklees will look to respond to that, and look to emphasise a build back better approach when we do have communities that do flood, be it residential or businesses. And another key part would be to extend the support to local communities. And then look to also take opportunity to align our strategy with incident response and our recovery strategy. And I'll end there, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Cooper.
So thank you for the presentation, much appreciated. One of the areas of concern I've got direct experience of is the block gullies, and Armitage Bridge is a place where I go whenever there's a high flood risk event coming. And about 18 months ago, I was with a number of other people desperately trying to get a gully open so we could unblock it, because two houses were going to be flooded because this gully was blocked. And so that was the gully had been reported previously as being blocked, but somehow or other nothing had been done. So it was down to people in the community to desperately try and get this gully open to unblock it. And this, of course, happened at a weekend, which didn't make life any easier. So I have raised this with Colin Parr, and he's assured me that action's now been taken on this, and that those sort of events shouldn't occur again. Another thing that sort of occurred to me is we have had flooding in Armitage Bridge in the past, and things can happen very, very quickly. And I do have a concern about the lack of sandbags on hand would it be really, really helpful to me as an elected member and to others as well, would be a lock-up garage with a load of sandbags in it, where I could go and pick up some sandbags and just get them over to people quickly without having to, at a weekend, ring up, hope that somebody answers, hope that somebody will come quickly with sandbags, because I have a sort of lack of faith that it will necessarily happen. So that's one concern. Another one is of course, as we've seen in recent years, things have got a lot worse, and climate change is meaning that we have more intense periods of rainfall that occur, and because of that, we find the shock of events happening very, very quickly arising. So as it is rising, are we actually accommodating within our strategy that things could get a lot worse, and how much worse have we accommodated for is one question. Another one is really about I guess, where does this strategy really fit in with planning, with the need for us to have sustainable urban drainage systems in place for new developments. I'm of the view that I may be wrong, that we're not doing enough nationally on sustainable urban drainage systems to reduce the flow of water, to slow the flow. So I'd be interested in your views on that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back, Chair. Road gullies, Councillor Cooper. Yeah, we've started to work, doing a piece of work where we've identified gullies that we know that once they're blocked can cause flooding. So we are doing that exercise, and we have kind of partially completed that exercise. So we did a campaign in December this year with kind of led by Colin Parr, where we did a blitz of all our priority gullies, and I'm sure you'll appreciate we won't be able to attend to all of them. We don't get a lot of time to respond. So we have done the exercise, Councillor Cooper, and we are looking to do that more often. So on approach to certainly towards the Christmas end, where we get these slower storms and the kind of stretch for many days. So we have got that identified, and we are trying to identify them now in our pre-flood operational plans. So where we have got spotters deployed, one of their tasks is to not just look at river levels, it's to also identify debris screens that may be blocked in that locality, and also try to identify the gullies also. So I think we're aware of that, Councillor Cooper, and we are putting measures in place to be better at it going forward. And I think we're going to be a lot better prepared this year, and the work's started on that. Sandbags, we are reviewing the sandbag policy. It's an interesting one, because at the moment the policy only says that we provide sandbags at imminent danger, and that's quite tricky to deploy in time. So we are, and what we did this time around, before Storm Christoph arrived, we did proactively deploy sandbags, and I think that's going to be the theme going forward, Councillor Cooper. So we are reviewing the policy, so it does allow that. But there is obviously a logistical issue here. There are many properties that are vulnerable to flooding. So we've got the task to try to identify which areas we will need to prioritise. So it's a balance. It's a difficult role, because you see the rainfall coming in. You need to obviously use your judgment and experience, and try to say, right, it's going to be areas in the northwest or the east or the southwest that are going to flood first, and we'll try and make a proactive deployment. So that is something we are looking into. We are looking to review the policy, working with highway colleagues, looking at the logistical issues. So I would, if it was physically possible, I'd love to provide, as many as we can. But the reality is, it's about prioritising, and I think we will be doing a work, and that's going to be the theme going forward.
So just within the whole of the Newsham ward currently, there are probably about no more than 10 houses that are at risk of flooding at the moment, that could actually have that issue.
Yeah.
So having sandbags for 10 properties close on by in Armitage Bridge, just so, oh right, they're here in this garage, let's take them out and put them in, is that rather than let's ring up the emergency number, let's hope somebody answers it, let's hope somebody, we've got to take hope out of the equation and have some and have the ability for communities to protect themselves.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, going on to intense rainfall periods and climate. I mean, that's part of why we're looking to review the strategy, Councillor Cooper. It is to address climate change. I mean, we do look at climate change when we review planning applications. The policy is quite clear. We make adjustments for climate change, so we are making allowance for that. But yeah, I mean, one of the themes in the review is, as I touched on, was to look at adaptive pathways, and it's very much about that. It's about looking at how climate is constantly changing and the impacts it has on flooding within the district. So it's required. The strategy will hope to then address how we then adapt quickly to these new interventions as they happen. So yeah, I think, Councillor, you're quite right. That is a real issue. And we have got the view to review the strategy to make accommodations for that going forward. So hopefully that will put us in a better place for Centre in Kirklees.
What accommodations? Sorry, did you tell me? You said we're going to make accommodations for it going forward.
So I'll review to the strategy. In the strategy, we will look at ways how we would address impacts of climate change, specifically on flood risk.
Well, what sort of things do you think you might do?
We've got to look at methods of looking at reducing flood risk. So I think there's certainly scope in trying to plan for a longer period of time. Probably take a lot more worst case projections. Trying to introduce various methods into the strategy, like nature-based solutions, looking at other ways we could look to reduce flood risk and their impacts. I think community resilience is going to be a big theme of that going forward. So there's going to be further emphasis on that.
Okay, I think Councillor Zaman, did you want to come in on this particular area before I bring Matthias in?
Yes, Councillor Smader did. Thank you, Rashid, for that presentation. Councillor Cooper has touched on the question that I was going to ask in terms of your gullies and blocked drains. I was wanting to know, how often do you go around each ward to clean them? Because particularly in Batley East, we don't seem to be getting our fair share of the cleansing. We're constantly having to go back to the council to request cleaning the drains. So I was just wanting to know how often you can do go around.
Yeah, and I think there's a 28-day response time as well for when you report a blocked one.
Well, Councillor, it's probably worth highlighting. I don't oversee that activity. It's with colleagues in highways, but I do know they use the gritting routes, and those are ones that they would prioritise. And quite often, gullies that do come through various customer through ROS requests or stuff like that, we would do them on a reactive basis. I kind of touched on was now kind of prioritising the gullies that are at flood risk, that can cause flooding, is the ones that we will prioritise. So first of all, I don't have the answer, but I could probably come back if that's okay.
Could I just ask a question at this point? So if you're prioritising gullies in places where was it ice? Did you say where it's prone to icing up and
flooding? Flooding, Councillor Cooper.
No, you mentioned about. I thought it was about ice areas which were.
Gritting routes.
Gritting routes.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking that the areas which you're going to grit, which need more grit and are more prone to issues, are going to be higher ground. I would have thought those are the areas which are more at risk. and that a lot of the issues we've got are at lower ground, and not necessarily on gritting routes either, because they're quite near rivers and streams and gullies, and that isn't always where we
So
it seems like the prioritization might be possibly faulty.
Yeah, I think, Councillor, like I said, we have now listed the gullies that are in those low spot areas. So we are going to be doing that more often. We've done it in December, where we prioritise. We provided intelligence of all the gullies that we are aware of that have known to cause flooding. So a block gully that caused flooding, we have now identified them. So we will be adding them on to that list. So hopefully that will address that going forward.
Okay.
Matthias, you wanted to come in?
Chair. Matthias Franklin, Head of Planning.
Sorry, Matthias.
It's okay, Councillor. I get all sorts. So just to pick up some of the points Councillor Cooper was making about SUDs and how that relates to planning. SUDs are the first, the top hierarchy of the government's drainage strategy for new plan developments, where the testing of the ground conditions allows for natural drainage, which is what SUDs are in effect. In Kirklees, we do not have a significant areas that are suitable for infiltration methods. There is some, of course, and some of our new development sites that have come forward as a result of the local plan have SUD schemes incorporated within them. It is very much a case-by-case basis of each individual site being assessed for its suitability for infiltration, and if it's not, then storage and attenuation is the next port of call. So there's a methodology which the government set out, which councils and local planning authorities and local flood authorities ask applicants and developers to follow. I think allied to that is the need to ensure that the planned approach for housing growth and job growth follows what the strategy sets out, but equally follows the identification of suitable sites, and the local plan process included an element of evaluation of sites on their sustainability credentials, of which ensuring that it was potentially practical to drain a site was a key component of that analysis and justification in plan making. But within the plan itself are several chapters that cover environmental issues, including flood risk management. We have some technical guidance that we've prepared in combination with our West Yorkshire counterparts through the combined authority. And I think developers generally are following the guise of if they can infiltrate, they are being encouraged to do so, but we need to make sure that the geotechnical issues, the underlying rocks and percolation system below ground are suitable for the infiltration method. So that's a bit of a case-by-case basis that we're working on. But clearly, the more that we follow our local plan and deliver housing and job growths on the land that we've identified within that, the less likely we are to need to put housing or employment opportunities in areas of higher flood risk. So they are linked, interconnected in that way. And that also then means that we have drainage systems on a lot of unmanaged land, which also helps to control and regulate the flow. And the overarching planning test is to not make flooding any worse and not to exacerbate it anywhere else as a result of the development. Those are the sort of underlying principles that we approach new developments for the types of drainage systems we install. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Andrew.
So thanks for that advice. So do developers have the option of saying that they can't do SUDs due to affordability criteria? If we go to them and say Yes, we'd like you to put in some form of sustainable urban drainage system to reduce the impact of this development. Do they have the option of saying, well, that's all very well, but it's going to cost me an awful lot of money?
Well, to be fair, it's normally the cheaper option for developers because the ground is suitable for percolation, as long as they leave enough space for that catchment to take place, and the testing that they do when they bore holes into the ground and they test how the percolation soaks away under the ground, that's a cheaper option for them than having to put in very large tanks where they have to dig holes in the ground, put storage tanks in, feed networks of pipes to find out to a watercourse. That's potentially a more expensive solution for them. So on the face of it, SUDS is an attractive proposition for developers. We haven't yet come across a scenario where a developer has said the drainage solution that the infiltration method, the SUDS method, is a barrier to development or requires us to ask you to visit viability on the wider planning obligations. Okay. And as I say, in Kirklees, because of our geotechnical issues and the nature of our topography and the rock bed underneath, we don't have huge areas of land that naturally soak away. It's more prevalent in other parts of the country. It depends on the subsoil and the rock system underneath that quite often. So I think that's a bit of a Pennine issue.
Okay.
Habiban, do you want to come back on your question?
Yeah, and it's another question that I had, and it's a question to Rashid regarding the property flood resilience DEFRA grant, which they've launched earlier in January. I was wanting to know, how are they targeting communities to come and apply for this, or how do they know where to go, who's signposting them, is there an application process? What sort of engagements taking place with communities to get this information out so they know that this grant is available?
Yeah, Zaban, what we've done, Councillor Zaban, is we have created an online web portal. So we have a new web page developed that explains the full criteria, and it's an online application process. And what we've done in order to engage the public, we have contacted everyone that we know that is likely to be eligible. So we've contacted them by letter, we've contacted them by email, and the uptake is pretty slow. So what we've done now this week is we're going to be trying to phone them, the people that we're aware that we feel that should be coming forward. Is that to answer your question?
Online, what about those families that are not online or don't understand how to complete the application, or know where to find it? Because I wouldn't know, if I were an ordinary resident, I wouldn't know that you've put this information online, where to go for it, how to look for it, how to apply for it.
Yeah, so we have written to councillors about, and in the letter we've tried to explain where they will need to go. And if they've got any queries or questions, we've got a dedicated flood management inbox letter and a telephone number they can contact us should they want us to assist them in that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask? I have two questions actually. One is on the national strategy. So that talking about the right investment and planning decisions on sustainable growth and environmental improvements. So how is your strategy review going to be looking at whether we have those in place? And then on your action plan, are you going to be looking at some of these actions that seem to have been outstanding for quite a little while? For instance, 2.1, you've been engaging with wards now since 2018, and there's only 10 being engaged. Now, I appreciate you've probably done the top 10 that you needed to engage with, but you've got to finish this by 2023, according to your action plan. And I'm just wondering, as an example, how you're going to more quickly progress the items that have been on this action plan for quite some time. Thank you. Is that Rashid or?
Sorry.
Matthias?
Rash, do you want to answer the second questions, and then we'll probably have to both answer the first question. Is that okay, Chair? Rash?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Do you want to come on camera when you're speaking if you want to? Okay.
Well, I'll turn my camera on. So, hello. So yes, in relation to the first point of the question, clearly the government set the strategy around how applications must be approached in relation to flood risk. That's not a local criteria. We apply it locally because sites have to be either suitable for percolation or need a drainage strategy to align with that. We in Kirklees do have an up-to-date development plan. That development plan has identified enough land within allocated sites and a proportion of windfall that will meet our housing need and our job growth need. As that plan was developed, it was developed to ensure that those sites were in the lowest areas of flood risk, or if there were any flood zone risks associated with those allocations, it was identified that there would be technical solutions at the planning application stage that should be able to address those matters, and therefore they were identified. So we've got a strategy in place, which is the plan. And as development comes forward, as long as we make our decisions in accordance with the plan, we should be able to resist developments that would put pressure on sites where flood risk is more prevalent, because we have an ability to deliver our housing and job needs in a planned way. The risk clearly is if we do not maintain our housing requirements and our job requirement, that particularly in the housing issue, that we can be subject to planning appeals. And if those appeals are successful, then developers may unpick the plan-led system, and therefore we would be at risk of having to grant planning permissions for housing on land which is less than desirable. And that isn't just flood risk issues, that's other important green spaces, not necessarily greenbelt land, but other urban green spaces are potentially vulnerable to unplanned developments. So that the strategy is, if we follow the local plan, we should be able to meet our objectives of managing flood risk and improving some of the outcomes for unregulated land, which has not had any land drainage systems put in place. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. What about the action plan then, and the actions, and having a little bit of a review and actually progressing a little bit more quickly?
Yeah, Councillor, if I come in there, I mean, we have recruited this year. We have got a new principal project officer in now recruiting the team. We also have a new apprentice. So yeah, I mean, we have managed to get to 10 wards, but we have a programme that we feel now, with the resources that we've got now, that we will manage to get through all 23 wards by 2023. So that's going to be is a help towards us. So I'm not sure if that answers that question, Councillor.
By 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean,
2 more years.
I mean, we tend to get. I mean, we've done 4 this year because we've managed to recruit. Well, we've got an apprentice with us that happens to do that. But yeah, it does prove to be quite challenging. But we are going to aim to do 4 wards this year. I mean, if the chair feels uncomfortable, we can review that. If you want to set a new direction, if you want to, then I can go away and look into that and try to appease the chair if that's needed.
Well, I mean, there are quite a few actions that have been there for a while that don't seem to be getting very far. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm asking if you're going to have, when you're looking at your action plans, if you're going to have a look to see how you can speed that up.
Okay. Yeah.
There are areas that are just being looked at this year, for instance, in your high flood risk locations, where they're needing assessments, etc. They haven't been done, but this plan has been going since 2013. So it does. I know it's not necessarily your your responsibility, that, because you haven't been involved with this for that length of time, I'm presuming. But it just seems to me that it's not going at the pace that it should be going. That's my point. But Councillor Marchington is here now. So Councillor Marchington,
yeah,
I'm
thanks.
sure you have some questions.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Yeah, just following on from that point. So, what's the limiting factor in terms of getting these done more quickly? And what's the triage process? What's the prioritisation on it?
we have done. We did complete the cluster 4 study this year. We did the cluster 5, that was done, and we did complete the district-wide study of the surface water flood risk location. So we did manage to complete 3 studies, and we have commenced another 2 studies, clusters areas 6 and 7. And a part of our ask now is very much reviewing these studies and looking at the recommendations. And the process in starting them is very much about putting the bid in. We would go to the Environment Agency, we would make a request for local level funding, and that's once that was kind of approved, we will then commence the study work. So the funding is very much us going to the year and developing that. Does that answer the question?
So it's if there's a case for getting more funding from the Environment Agency, then that will be made.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I think the point is still, I think that process, needs to be a little quicker. Does anybody have any points they wish to raise on the flooding strategy and the recommendation to look at the local strategy in relation to the updated national strategy? No, we covered everybody's points. Okay, all right. Yes, happy band. Yeah.
On the on page 11, where you've got the implications for the council, where you've got the section on working with the people, can I ask that how often are you going to be engaging, and what are your methods for engagement on that? And also the point at the bottom on your climate change section, the recommendations made through the planning process and drainage provision on sites also future-proof against climate change impacts. Do we have any further information on that?
So, because I already got part of that, Zaman. So, what was your first query?
In terms of your engagement, on page 11, you've got a section on working with people.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm wanting to know, how often are you going to be engaging with people? What your engagement methods are going to be? Which areas are you going to be engaging in? Do you have that information?
Yeah, is that specific to the strategies at Council Man, or is that just in general? In general, a part of the community kind of inform activities that we do. Yeah, we do look at a number of the properties that we think are at highest risk, and then we would generally contact by way of letter. We would advise and give general advice on flood risk areas, give advice to what they could do better. So that's how we would prioritise that going forward. Does that answer the question, Councilman?
You're talking a lot about priorities. I'm actually asking, how are you engaging?
So it's by way of letter, Councilman. Yeah, it's usually by way of letter. We do a letter drop.
Okay.
Is that going to be as well on your update of your strategy?
No, I think the strategy is going to be probably a bit more informal than that. Not really thought it through, Councilman, but there's going to be, I imagine we'll do a press releases, we'll do various committee briefings, meetings. Given COVID, it may place some limitations on that. So it's about, it needs to be drafted up, Chair. There will be digital by design would probably be the method going forward. We'll probably have opportunities for the members themselves to come back, members of the public to come back, and we look at various ways where we could do that. The best ways of doing that, given COVID. So.
Okay, Councillor Zaman, did you want to come back?
Yeah, you've not answered my second question on do we have further information on the planning process for drainage provision on the new development sites and also future-proof against climate change impacts?
So what's the question? The planning process on the drainage design?
Yeah. If you look on page 11, where have you got the report in front of you?
Yeah, I've got the report. Yeah.
On the climate change and air quality section.
Yeah.
On the third paragraph on that, you've got recommendations made through the planning process and drainage provision on new developments.
All right, okay.
Yeah. So I'm asking that do you have further information on that? And if not, when's that going to be available?
So Councillor, we have produced a series of supplementary planning documents, one of which is the new residential design guides. That's for new build housing and new build housing estates effectively. As part of that, they obviously need to provide their technical information. A key element of that is the drainage information that comes in. We've, as I said earlier, I think we've got a West Yorkshire combined, a WICA produced document which relates to each of the 5 districts that sets out our requirements for what we expect developers to give us in relation to planning application submissions. And that so for Kirklees, it sets out what our discharge rates should be for greenfield or brownfield sites, if they and what we expect them to do in terms of giving us infiltration on-site survey information to demonstrate whether the site in its first principle is suitable for SUDs. So that's a requirement that comes in with every single planning application. We won't validate a planning application with our local list for criteria of what they have to submit for a planning application. If that information isn't in, we're updating that piece of work itself so that that's fit for purpose as well. So it's updated because we haven't done that for about 5 years. That piece of work is happening now, and we hope to have something to consult with developers and communities on about the requirements for planning application submissions. So we think we can improve the quality of what we get in at the start of a planning application by that local validation checklist. And that will include details about what developers and applicants generally need to give us in relation to drainage information for that's their particular development, whatever it is. And then our lead local flood authority engineers and designers will assess that information. I think what we're also doing is we're also using geotechnical support that's available in the city region to ensure that we understand the geology of sites, so that we don't, because we don't have in-house geologists in our organisation, so we draw on that specialism from across the city region to ensure that what technical information we're being shown about what happens under the ground is fit for purpose. And wherever possible, if soakaways SUDs are achievable on a site, then the planning policy is that developers should be providing that. It's only when the geology and the evidence demonstrates it's not suitable for a soakaway that we then move to a storage and a pipe solution into the combined sewers or to a watercourse.
Yeah, I suppose.
Sorry, come on, Rash.
I was going to come in there just to say that there's another piece of work that we are doing is to bring in geotechnical advice. We are working with colleagues in corporate procurement, so we are trying to establish a new framework of geotechnical services. So that's something that we are hoping to go live this year, and that'll certainly assist us in providing that any recommendations and drainage that comes through development sites.
So, and just to add to the point about climate change, which is at the heart of the planning system, about how new developments can contribute positively to water runoff and water management. I think we've touched on that in some of the presentation responses here, but very much the climate change allowance, so an extra amount of capacity of either storage on site or space for water is a requirement of the drainage strategy. So above and beyond what water falls on the site or runs off from the new roofs or the new buildings, there's an additional requirement for storage, and that's the and that's the climate change allowance that we have to plan for. So all new plan developments take account of what will be happening over the next period to allow for climate change. And I think what we just need to remember as a point is planning will deal with all the new developments that come on, but 90% of the built environment's already built. So it's how we deal with the existing network and the existing gullies and the maintenance that's probably our most important response to ensuring that we deal with the storm events. And we probably have to identify that in extreme weather, a lot of the drainage systems will overflow. They can't cope with the extreme weather that we get. It's about an averaged amount of downfall and weather events that we have to design and cater for, i.e. a reasonable expectation with an additional capacity for the climate change element. But in extreme events, these new systems can only hold so much water. So there is a challenge for us about how we communicate that back into communities. But we can design out most of the issues, but extreme storm events are something that some systems just could not handle when they immediately fall.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
All right, thank you. Are there any further questions? No. I've picked up some points then from our discussions about reactive work, so sandbag availability being a lot more localized, and to reduce the delay in the sandbags reaching the places where they're needed, the preventative work being improved, and the actions that are on the strategy being looked at to see if there can be an improvement in timelines for those actions. And also, when you're looking at your strategy review, having an engagement strategy, I think that would be worthwhile to set out how you're going to engage with people on that. And also maybe making sure that the flooded strategy doesn't stand in isolation, that it actually stands with other planning documents and strategies, etc. Have I summarised things, or does anybody else want to raise any more points as actions? No? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time today. If you wish to leave the meeting, those that have been involved in that item, officers involved in that item, that's fine. Thank you very much for your time. Right, okay. We are going to now move on to the place-based working group progress. With an update on this, Councillor Uppal fortunately can't be here to give the update, but you may remember that in September 2019, this committee looked at a report for the developing approach to place-based working, and in response we resolved to establish a place-based working group, members drawn from corporate and economy and neighbourhood scrutiny panel, with a remit of considering this place-based working in greater depth. Between 2019 and 2021, the group has gathered to gain evidence and on the progress, the engagement processes and the planned next steps. The group has also held a joint meeting with the Place Partnership leads in December 2020 to discuss progress of Place Partnership pilot projects. And in the context of COVID-19, the group has throughout the process considered the impact on planned work due to subsequent additional demand that was placed on council resources. And the group has received regular updates on the council's community response to the pandemic And at a meeting in November, met with and gathered evidence from third sector leaders, community anchor organisation representatives to gain their insight on place-based working. The group is now drawn together its key findings and is considered a draft report and has begun to finalise their recommendations for inclusion in the final report, which will be coming to this committee on the 15th of April meeting. It will be hopefully a one item agenda, because that will be quite a big piece of discussion, I think, and then we will look to see the recommendations that we put forward to Cabinet from the group. Okay, all right, so that's the update. Does anybody want to raise any points on that matter? Okay, right then, so we'll move now on to item 9, which is the establishment of an ad hoc panel on residential housing stock health and safety compliance. So what we are proposing is to set up an ad hoc to look at this area of work. There is a terms of reference that are mentioned in the report, when I can just sort my papers out and get there. Page 22 of your papers, there's some draft terms of reference for the panel, and also at item 2.3 it says about suspending political balance ratio, and as part of the process to establish the ad hoc, I will be proposing that we do that on the 1111 balance that we've done on the last Almo ad hoc that we did on the housing stock. Naz, do you want to say anything on this ad hoc? Do you want to come in at all?
Just coming off mute, Councillor Smage, and thank you for inviting me to speak. Yes, I think that we probably do need something like this in terms of the work we're doing within the Homes and Neighbourhood Service. And as you will know from the previous ad hoc Scrutiny's work, it was heavily involved in influencing the decision to create a Building Safety Assurance Board, which we're busy establishing and populating, and have now got its terms of reference in place. So actually, given the kind of the emphasis that the social housing white paper places on tenant safety and tenant voice, I think it's quite an important panel to set up as part of our overall governance arrangements. I think in addition to giving members assurance, I think it's also something that the regulator would welcome in its new role over local authorities. It does light touch regulation on local authorities, but the white paper signals a much more significant role for the social housing regulator. So I think all of this would be consistent with the direction of travel, both in the Building Safety Bill and in the social housing white paper.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions they wish to raise on this item? Councillor Cooper.
In the summary of the reports, as it mentions high-rise blocks, are we also looking at low-rise blocks, 6-storey blocks? Are we looking at fire safety in some of the other low-rise blocks, sort of 2-storey blocks even?
So obviously tenant safety is paramount for the service, so we do kind of fire risk assessments across all of our low-rise blocks, and are in view, I guess, for this scrutiny panel. I think the terms of reference are saying that given the current the issue we had at the high rises just before Christmas, where we introduced waking watch, that there should be a focus. I think that's appropriate in the sense that it's also the building safety regulators' focus as well as the focus of the social housing white paper. And that doesn't mean to say we're not working on the low rise, but in terms of assurance frameworks, that's the first protocol. But I would expect the panel to assure itself that officers in the service is doing all it should be doing in terms of both compliance, but I mean, compliance shouldn't be the driver, should it? Tenant safety as a must for a landlord is the driver, but obviously we would want to be compliant when we're doing that as well.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the point on ensuring a sustainable and adaptable system is in place to ensure that safety is embedded for the future. I think that the lower rise buildings, the system for the lower rise buildings will be included in that. Yes. Councillor Zaman. You're on mute, Councillor Zaman.
Sorry. It's a question just on the white paper itself and some of the safety bills that you're talking about. How are you going to include the tenant's voice within all that?
So the tenant's voice, again, as I say, is a large part of the social housing regulators white paper, but it was also a very large part of the social housing green paper. And so for the last 18 months, we have been working alongside ad hoc scrutiny panel, as was, to ensure that the tenant's voice is engaged, fully engaged in, one, helping us to shape the future, but two, also to ensure that the openness and transparency that the social housing white paper and the building safety bill require, that the information on fire risk assessments is published. So we do that already now in anticipation that we will be required to, both on our high rise and our low rise buildings, particularly where there are communal facilities in our low rises where some of the additional risk factors come into play. So the whole point about setting up a building safety assurance board is to be consistent with that, to ensure that we are complying, not only complying but also exceeding where possible the standards that are required of a landlord of our stature and nature. So the plans are in place. Both policy documents are in a position where they're not yet act. So we're not trying to second guess, but also thinking, well, we know pretty much what will become legislation, so we're preparing for that as good practice.
Okay, all right, thank you. If there are no more points, so the proposal is for the ad hoc to be established with the terms of reference as set out in 2.2, for there to be an independent specialist advisor be appointed to advise the ad hoc scrutiny panel because of some of the technical nature of what we're going to need to talk about, and also that we have a co-optee invited to join the panel as well, and that the political balance be suspended and the panel be on a 1-1-1-1 basis. I think I should have 4 ones there. Is everybody okay with that, or does anybody have any points they want to raise on that?
Liz, sorry,
Yeah.
the co-optee, is that one of
Yes.
our
Yes.
scrutiny co-optees? Okay. Just might be worth exploring. I don't know if we're appointing any more co-optees in the near future, but one of the tenants or residents or one of the co-optees who've got housing experience have been involved in there in the future.
Yeah, the co-optee that we actually had before, Linda, she was absolutely excellent, actually.
Yeah.
But we will consider the co-optees with suitable experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So is that okay with everybody to establish that ad hoc panel, which is, I think, very much needed? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Right then, so we'll move to Naz, if you want to leave, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Item 9 then, no, sorry, item 10. We are item 10 is the work programme. And we just have one meeting left in this municipal year, and that will be the 15th of April, and that will be the place-based working group report that we've already mentioned. The schedule for 21-22 will be published, and the panels appointed as usual as close to the 19th, either on or close to the 19th of May, which is the annual meeting. Okay, after the annual meeting as usual. And then we'll be looking to have workshop sessions for panels that require them in late May or early June. Okay. We also have draft dates for the management committee. So provisional meeting invitations will go out in due course. Right then, and I think any other business, we've just got 2 updates for you on that. The Place Partnership funding update on the domestic abuse strategy. The Cabinet meeting on the 16th of February gave approval to allocation 240,000 of the 1 million mental health theme budget to deliver the community support programme. And yesterday, the Cabinet discussed the 400,000 from the domestic abuse theme budget to build capacity, train, equip staff and communities to recognise the signs and make links. So that item is now gone through Cabinet. Okay. Does anybody else have anything they wish to bring up at this point in time? Yeah. So that is the end of the formal meeting. The panel will move into a workshop now, but that is the end of the formal meeting. Thank you.